Hello, everyone. If you enjoy my channel, please support me with one like, one subscribe, and one share.
The worst shower of my life. Have you ever stood under a hot shower, the water pounding against your back, and felt like your entire world was crumbling around you? Not because of the water, not because of the temperature, but because your brain simply refused to stop screaming? Imagine that moment right now. You're standing there, steam filling the small bathroom of your tiny American apartment, and you can't remember how you got here. You can't remember who you were supposed to be. You came to the United States with this grand, beautiful, almost childish dream of freedom, of opportunity, of the kind of life they show you in movies, the one where the sunsets are always golden and your neighbors wave at you from their manicured lawns. But here you are, soap in your eyes, maybe a few tears mixed in, and the only thing echoing louder than the water in your ears is the crushing, suffocating silence of an email you just received. The one that said, "We regret to inform you." Those 4 words. That's all it took to wash away years of hard work, a mountain of student debt, and every single ounce of pride you had left in your bones. And now, you're asking yourself the one question that no one warns you about when you pack your bags and board that plane. What happens when the American dream turns into a quiet, unforgiving nightmare? But wait, before we get too deep into the chaos of that terrible morning, let me stop and ask you something. Why are you really here? Are you here because you're struggling to learn English? Because every time you open your mouth, the words get stuck somewhere between your brain and your lips, and you feel like you're failing everyone? Or maybe you're here because you're actually doing okay with the language, but you're going through something else, something dark and heavy that has nothing to do with grammar or vocabulary. Perhaps you lost your job, too. Perhaps you're miles away from home, and the loneliness is eating you alive. I see you. I see the person sitting there, scrolling through YouTube, desperate for something, anything to hold on to. And the reason I can see you is because I was you, not in a metaphorical, we're all in this together kind of way, but literally. I was the one standing in that shower, letting the hot water run cold, because I couldn't muster the energy to turn the knob. That day, the day I lost my job, wasn't just a bad day. It was the day I lost my ability to believe in anything. You see, when you're an immigrant or even just someone trying to make it in a new place, your job isn't just a job. It's your visa. It's your identity. It's the proof that you're not a failure, that your parents didn't sacrifice everything for nothing. And when that proof disappears, poof, just like that, you're left standing in a cold shower with nothing but the echo of your own racing heart. There's this weird psychological phenomenon that happens when you experience sudden unemployment, especially in a foreign country. It's not just the financial panic, though that's definitely a part of it. It's something deeper. It's a profound identity crisis. Your brain, that clever but sometimes cruel organ, starts to replay every decision you ever made. Why did you major in that? Why didn't you stay home? Why did you think you were special enough to make it here? It becomes a constant, exhausting loop of self-doubt. And the science behind it is absolutely fascinating and absolutely terrifying. You see, our brains are wired for predictability and safety. We crave patterns. When you wake up every morning and go to a job, your brain releases a steady stream of dopamine that helps you feel stable. It's not a huge amount, it's not like winning the lottery, but it's a consistent drip that keeps you functioning. But the moment that structure disappears, your brain essentially goes into panic mode. The amygdala, which is the fear center of your brain, lights up like a Christmas tree. It starts sending distress signals to the rest of your body, telling your nervous system that you are in immediate, life-threatening danger. And the craziest part? Your body reacts to the loss of a job almost exactly the way it would react to being chased by a bear. That same adrenaline, that same cortisol spike, that same overwhelming urge to either fight or flee. And the thing is, you can't fight the bear. You can't run away from yourself. So you just stand there, frozen, letting the water wash over you, unable to move. That was me. On that specific morning, I wasn't just someone who had lost a job. I was someone who had lost the plot of their own life. I had come to the U.S. with a heart full of hope and a suitcase full of dreams. I pictured myself walking through the streets of New York, drinking coffee in little cafes, and discussing big ideas with brilliant people. I thought that if I worked hard enough, if I stayed up late enough, if I learned the language well enough, that I would be rewarded. I thought that the American system was built for people like me, hard workers who just needed a chance. But that morning, standing in that tiny bathroom, I realized that the system wasn't designed for me at all. It was designed for people who already had connections, people whose parents spoke English, people who didn't have to translate their resumes or their feelings. It was a brutal, sobering realization. And I felt so incredibly stupid. I felt like a child who had been tricked. I remember shouting in the shower, not angry shouting, but desperate shouting. Like if I just yelled loud enough, the universe would rewind time and give me another chance. But that's not how life works, is it? Life doesn't hit pause because you're having a breakdown. Life keeps going. The clock on the wall kept ticking. The traffic outside kept honking. And the email on my phone kept blinking, reminding me of exactly what I had lost. I wanted to call my mom. I missed the sound of her voice. But I knew that if I called her, if I heard that familiar, comforting accent from home, I would completely fall apart. And I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Because I had rent due in 2 weeks. I had a car that was making a weird noise. I had a brain that was refusing to cooperate. So, I did what any sensible person does when they're completely lost. I stopped trying to figure it all out. I turned off the water. I dried myself off. And I walked into the tiny living room of my apartment, a place that suddenly felt more empty than it had ever been. I sat down on the couch, staring at the wall, and I just let myself be. I let myself feel the terrible weight of failure. I didn't fight it. And here's the strange part, and this is the first little miracle I want to share with you. In that moment of complete surrender, in that moment where I stopped pretending and stopped fighting, something very quiet happened. A thought. Not a loud, panic thought. A soft one. It whispered to me, just get through today. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about next year. Just get through this one day. And that tiny thought, that microscopic shift in perspective, was the first thread of the lifeline I would eventually hold on to. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that I was hungry. I was tired. And I had no idea where my next meal was coming from. It's funny how the body works, isn't it? No matter how many psychological traumas you're going through, the body still demands fuel. Your stomach doesn't care about your feelings. Your liver doesn't care about your crushed dreams. So I had to find food. But I couldn't bring myself to go to a grocery store. I couldn't bear the thought of scanning the aisle, picking the cheapest bread, and seeing the looks of pity from the cashier. I felt like I was wearing a neon sign that read, "Failed Immigrant." So I stayed in my apartment. I ate the last slice of stale bread. I drank some water. And I sat there in the semi-darkness, just existing. And this is where the story actually starts to get good. I saw it. A piece of paper that had been pushed under my door by some neighbor I'd never met. It was a flyer. And at first I was going to throw it away. I thought it was junk mail. But there was something about the color of the paper that caught my eye. It was a soft, warm yellow. And printed in simple, black ink was a message. Free community meal, Sunday at noon. Everyone is welcome. And underneath that, in a smaller font, it said, "You are not alone." That line hit me harder than the email about my job. It was such a simple statement, but it felt like it was meant just for me. You are not alone. In a city of millions, in a country that felt so foreign, a piece of yellow paper told me that I wasn't invisible. That day, my pride, that thick, useless armor I had been hiding behind, started to crack. And the thought of a free meal, a hot meal, made my stomach growl. But more than that, the thought that someone out there might actually care enough to feed a stranger, that was what made me stand up. That was the moment I decided to go. Not because I believed in God, not because I was religious, but because I was hungry. And sometimes, being hungry is the greatest motivation you can ever have. It strips away all the pretenses. It takes away all the confusion. And it leaves you with one simple, undeniable truth. You need help. And asking for help is the first, hardest, and most necessary step toward rebuilding your life. The American Dream's empty fridge. Now, let me paint you a picture of that apartment I was living in. It wasn't the kind of place you see in those glossy American magazines where everything is white and minimal and looks like nobody actually lives there. No. My apartment was the kind of place where the walls were so thin you could hear your neighbor sneeze and you'd automatically say, "Bless you," out of habit, only to realize they couldn't hear you through the layers of peeling paint and awkward silences. The fridge was empty. Not just "I need to go grocery shopping" empty, but the kind of hollow, echoing emptiness that makes you avoid opening the door altogether because seeing those bare shelves feels like looking into your own future. There was a half-empty bottle of ketchup that had been there since I moved in, a single egg that I was saving for a special occasion, and a carton of milk that had expired 3 days ago, but I kept telling myself was still fine because I couldn't afford to throw anything away. That fridge, in many ways, became the symbol of my entire existence in America. It was cold, uninviting, and desperately in need of replenishment. But here's the thing about the American dream. The one they sell you on television and in movies and in the whispered promises of relatives who've already made the journey. Nobody tells you about the empty fridge. Nobody shows you the nights you spend staring at the ceiling, calculating exactly how many dollars you have left and how many days you can stretch them. Nobody mentions that even in a land of plenty, you can still feel starving. You see, when you come to the United States, you're not just learning a new language. You're learning a new way of being hungry. And that hunger isn't just physical. It's a deep, gnawing, existential hunger that comes from realizing that every single safety net you once had is gone. Back home, if things got bad, you had family. You had neighbors who would drop off food without asking. You had a community that understood your struggles because they were living the same ones. But here, you're just another face in the crowd. Another immigrant trying to make it. And nobody owes you anything. That first week after losing my job, I remember walking around the city with this strange feeling of disconnection. Everything looked the same, the Starbucks on the corner, the yellow taxis honking their way through traffic, the tourists taking photos of buildings they'd never remember, but everything felt different. I felt invisible. And the worst part is, invisibility is terrifying. Because when you're invisible, you could scream at the top of your lungs and nobody would turn their head. You could collapse in the middle of the sidewalk and people would just walk around you, assuming someone else would help. That kind of loneliness isn't just sad. It's dangerous. Psychologically, the isolation that comes with being an immigrant in crisis is actually a form of trauma. And the science behind it is genuinely fascinating and heartbreaking. There's this concept in psychology called social pain. And studies have shown that the brain processes emotional rejection and loneliness in the exact same way it processes physical pain. The same neural pathways light up. The same distress signals are sent. So when you're sitting alone in a tiny apartment in a foreign country, staring at an empty fridge, your brain is genuinely interpreting that as a physical threat. It's not just sad. It's actual, measurable agony. And that agony makes everything worse. It makes it harder to sleep, harder to focus, harder to even think about what your next step should be. You're essentially trying to solve a life or death problem while your brain is screaming at you that you're under attack. It's a losing battle. But here's what I want you to understand about that time in my life. It wasn't just the job loss that broke me. It was the cumulative weight of 1,000 smaller losses. It was the loss of my routine, the loss of my morning coffee ritual, the loss of nodding hello to the security guard who always smiled at me, the loss of feeling useful. When you're working, even if you hate your job, there's a certain dignity that comes from having a purpose. You wake up in the morning, you put on your clothes, and you go out into the world and contribute something, even if it's small, even if it's just sending emails or making spreadsheets. You matter. But when that's taken away, you start to wonder if you ever mattered at all. I remember spending hours just watching videos of people living their lives. Not in a creepy way, but in a desperate attempt to feel connected. I'd watch vloggers eating breakfast, walking their dogs, complaining about traffic, and I'd feel this overwhelming envy. How could they have such ordinary problems? How could they complain about a latte being too hot when I was trying to figure out how to pay for rent? It was that petty, jealous spiral that made me feel even worse. And then there was the language barrier. The thing that was supposed to be my ticket to this new life had suddenly become my biggest obstacle. Because when you're stressed, when you're terrified, when you're hungry, your brain doesn't want to perform. It wants to survive. It goes back to what it knows. And what it knows, what it had known for decades, was my native language. Not this clunky, awkward English that I had worked so hard to perfect. Not the sentences I'd rehearsed in my head 100 times before speaking them. My brain would short-circuit mid-sentence, and I'd find myself stammering, unable to find the word for something as simple as bread or water. And then I'd feel even more useless. More stupid. More like I didn't belong. And here's the beautiful, cruel irony of it all. I had come to America to learn English, to improve my life, to become the best version of myself. And now, English felt like my enemy. It felt like the wall standing between me and survival. Because if I could just explain myself better, maybe someone would help. If I could just sound more American, maybe they'd see me, but I couldn't. So I stayed silent. I stayed hidden. I stayed in that apartment with the empty fridge, slowly losing the will to even try. But then, somewhere in the middle of that dark, suffocating week, something shifted. I don't know exactly what happened. Maybe it was the hunger. Maybe it was the boredom. Maybe it was just the realization that I had hit rock bottom, and the only direction left was up. But I started thinking about all those people who had made it before me. All those immigrants who had come to this country with nothing but a suitcase and a prayer. How did they survive? How did they find the courage to keep going when everything inside them was screaming to give up? And I realized in that moment that the difference between the people who make it and the people who don't isn't talent or intelligence or even luck. It's connection. It's the willingness to reach out, to open your mouth, to ask for help even when every cell in your body is telling you to stay quiet. And that brings me back to that yellow piece of paper. The flyer about the free meal. The message that said, "You are not alone." I had been sitting on that message for days, holding it in my hand, turning it over and over, as if the paper itself held some magical secret. And in that moment, sitting in my empty apartment, staring at that empty fridge, I made a decision. A tiny, insignificant, almost pathetic decision. I decided I would go. I would swallow my pride. I would walk into that church, even though I wasn't religious. I would sit with strangers, even though I was terrified. And I would eat a free meal, even though it felt like a failure. And you know what? Looking back, that decision wasn't pathetic at all. That decision was the bravest thing I had ever done. because it meant I was choosing to fight. It meant I was choosing to believe, just for a moment, that maybe the world wasn't as cold and cruel as it seemed. It meant I was choosing to hope. And hope, my friends, is a very dangerous thing. Because once you let it in, once you crack the door just a tiny inch, it floods in like light. And light, even a tiny sliver of it, can illuminate the darkest corners of your soul. It can show you the way out. It can show you that the American dream isn't a destination, it's a journey. And sometimes, the journey takes you through some very dark, very cold, very empty places. But if you keep walking, if you keep taking those small, terrifying steps, you eventually find yourself somewhere you never expected. You find yourself in a room full of strangers who become family. You find yourself holding a bowl of soup that tastes like salvation. You find yourself alive. And that, right there, is the miracle. Not the food, not the job, not the money, but the simple, extraordinary, almost unbelievable fact that you didn't give up. A whisper, not a roar. Let me tell you something strange about the moment you decide to accept help. It's not like in the movies. There's no dramatic music swelling in the background. There's no sudden ray of sunlight breaking through the clouds to illuminate your path. No, the moment you decide to accept help is usually quiet, unremarkable, almost disappointingly ordinary. You're just sitting there in your underwear, eating the last piece of stale bread you found in the back of your cupboard, and you think, well, I guess I have no other choice. That was me. That was my grand epiphany. Sitting on the floor of my apartment because the couch felt too far away, holding that yellow piece of paper like it was a winning lottery ticket, and realizing that my pride was a luxury I could no longer afford. You see, pride is a funny thing. It's useful. It keeps you going when things get tough. It makes you hold your head high even when you want to collapse. But pride can also be a cage. It can trap you in a cycle of suffering because you're too embarrassed to admit that you need help. And I had been trapped for a long time. Too long. I had convinced myself that asking for help was a sign of weakness. That if I just worked a little harder, prayed a little longer, tried a little more, everything would magically fix itself. But the universe doesn't work on magic. It works on connection. And I had forgotten that. I had forgotten that every single person who has ever made it through a dark time did so because someone else reached out a hand. No one survives alone. No one. So I decided to go to that church. I made the decision. But then came the hard part, actually getting there. Sunday morning arrived, and I woke up feeling like I was about to walk into a job interview. My hands were sweaty. My heart was pounding. My brain was doing that thing it does where it creates a million worst-case scenarios. What if they ask me questions I can't answer? What if they judge me for being unemployed? What if they look at me and see exactly what I am, a failure, a fraud, a person who couldn't make it in the land of opportunity? These thoughts were so loud, so overwhelming, that I almost stayed in bed. I almost gave up before I even started. But then I remembered the empty fridge. I remembered the hunger. And I realized that my fear of being judged was less important than my need to survive. So I put on my clothes. I chose the nicest shirt I had, even though it was wrinkled and had a small stain on the sleeve that I couldn't get out. I combed my hair. I brushed my teeth. I tried to look like someone who had their life together, even though inside I was falling apart. And then I walked out the door. The church was only a few blocks away, but it felt like a pilgrimage. Every step I took felt heavy, weighted down by the shame of what I was about to do. I was going to church to get free food. I was going to be one of those people. The ones you see on the street, holding signs. The ones you walk past without making eye contact. I had become that person. And it hurt. It hurt more than I can possibly describe. The church itself was beautiful. It was one of those old buildings with stained glass windows that catch the light in a way that makes you feel like you're standing inside a rainbow. There was a sign outside that said, "All are welcome," and I almost laughed. All are welcome. That's what they all say. But do they really mean it? Do they really welcome the tired, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free? Or do they just say that to make themselves feel better? I stood outside for a long time, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. I watched people walk in, families with children, elderly couples holding hands, young professionals who looked like they had just come from the gym. They all seemed so normal, so comfortable, like they belonged. And I felt like an imposter, a fraud, someone who didn't deserve to be there. But then I saw something that changed my mind. I saw a woman. She was older, maybe in her 70s, and she was struggling to carry a bag of groceries up the church steps. A man, a stranger, ran over to help her. He took the bag from her hands, smiled, and said something that made her laugh. And in that moment, I realized that this wasn't a place of judgment. It was a place of kindness. A place where people helped each other without expecting anything in return. And I needed that. I needed to be around people who believed in goodness. So I walked in. The inside of the church was even more beautiful than the outside. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass, casting colorful patterns on the wooden pews. There was a soft hum of conversation, like the sound of 100 people whispering their hopes and fears to the air. And there was a smell, a wonderful, warm, mouth-watering smell, the smell of food. My stomach growled so loudly, I'm pretty sure the person next to me heard it. But I didn't care. I was too focused on the food. I followed the smell to a room at the back of the church. A large room with long tables covered in white tablecloths. And on those tables were dishes and dishes of food. Pasta. Salad, bread, soup, dessert. It was like walking into a dream. I stood there, frozen, just staring at the food. I had forgotten what a real meal looked like. I had forgotten what it felt like to eat something that wasn't stale or expired or the cheapest thing I could find at the grocery store. And then someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around, expecting to be told that I was in the wrong place, that I didn't belong, that this food was only for people who actually mattered. But instead, I saw a woman with a kind face and warm eyes. She was holding a plate. "Are you here for the meal?" she asked. Her voice was soft, gentle, like she was talking to a scared animal. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. My throat was tight. My eyes were burning. I was about to cry, right there in the middle of the church, in front of all these strangers. I nodded. I couldn't say anything, but I nodded. And she smiled. "Take a seat," she said. "I'll bring you a plate." And just like that, I was saved. Not saved in a religious sense. Not saved in a dramatic sense. Saved in the simple, beautiful, human sense of being seen. Someone had seen me. Someone had acknowledged my existence. Someone had decided that I was worth feeding, and that someone was a complete stranger. A woman who didn't know my name, my story, my struggles. But she saw me. And in that moment, I realized something profound. I realized that the American dream isn't about becoming rich. It's not about owning a house or driving a nice car or having a successful career. Those things are nice, but they're not the dream. The dream is this. It's the moment when someone extends a hand and says, "You belong here." It's the moment when you realize that you're not alone. That there are people in this world who care, not because they have to, but because they choose to. And that choice, that simple act of choosing kindness, is the most powerful thing in the universe. It can change lives. It can save lives. It saved mine. So I sat down at that table, surrounded by strangers, and I ate. I ate slowly, savoring every bite because I didn't know when I would have a meal like this again. And as I ate, I listened. I listened to the conversations around me. People talking about their jobs, their families, their dreams. People laughing. People sharing stories. And I realized that this was what I had been missing. Connection. Community. The simple, profound experience of being part of something bigger than myself. I had been so focused on surviving that I had forgotten how to live. But in that room, surrounded by people who had nothing in common except their willingness to show up, I remembered. I remembered what it felt like to be human. And that, my friends, is a miracle. Not a loud, dramatic, world-changing miracle, but a quiet one. A whisper, not a roar. A whisper that says, "You are not alone. You have never been alone. And you never will be alone." The walk of shame and hope. Let me take you back to that Sunday morning. The walk to the church was only 6 blocks. 6 blocks. That's nothing, right? In New York City, 6 blocks is basically the distance between 2 subway stops. You could walk it in 5 minutes. But for me, that Sunday morning, those 6 blocks felt like 6,000 miles. Every step was a battle. Every step was a war between my pride and my hunger. And let me tell you, hunger is a fierce warrior. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't compromise. It just keeps screaming until you feed it. So I walked. But I walked slowly. I walked with my head down, avoiding eye contact with everyone I passed. I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want anyone to ask where I was going. Because if they asked, I would have to admit the truth. I was going to church to get free food. I was going to be one of those people. And the shame of that admission was almost unbearable. Have you ever felt that shame? That deep, gnawing, gut-wrenching shame that comes from admitting you can't do it alone? The shame that makes you want to crawl into a hole and disappear? I know you have. We all have. Because shame is universal. It doesn't care about your nationality, your language, or your background. It just shows up, uninvited, and makes itself at home in your heart. And the worst part is, shame is a liar. It tells you that you're the only one who feels this way. It tells you that everyone else has it together. It tells you that you're broken, defective, beyond repair. But here's the truth. Shame is a liar. I want you to repeat that to yourself. Shame is a liar. Because the reality is, every single person on this planet has felt exactly what you're feeling right now. Every single person has had moments where they felt like they were falling apart. Every single person has needed help. And the people who seem the most put together? The ones who always smile, always succeed, always have it all figured out? Those people are the ones who have learned to ask for help. They've learned to swallow their pride and accept that they can't do it alone. And that's not weakness. That's strength. That's the kind of strength I was learning, one painful step at a time, on that Sunday morning. As I walked, I started to notice things I had never noticed before. The way the sun hit the windows of the brownstones. The way the leaves on the trees rustled in the wind. The way a little girl holding her father's hand laughed at something he said. These small, ordinary moments of life. I had been so focused on my own pain, my own failure, my own shame, that I had stopped seeing the world around me. But that morning I saw it. I saw the beauty in the ordinary. And it made me realize something important. Hope doesn't always come in grand gestures. It doesn't always come in the form of a new job or a big paycheck or a sudden stroke of luck. Sometimes, hope comes in the quiet moments. In the warmth of the sun on your skin. In the sound of a child's laughter. In the simple, unexpected kindness of a stranger. And as I walked those 6 blocks, I started to notice hope everywhere. I noticed it in the way the barista at the coffee shop smiled at the customer. I noticed it in the way the man on the corner held the door open for a woman with a stroller. I noticed it in the way the birds sang, completely oblivious to the fact that my life was falling apart. And I realized that hope is always there. It's always waiting. We just have to be willing to see it. But it wasn't easy. Every few steps, my brain would kick in and start screaming at me. What are you doing? This is pathetic. You're better than this. You don't need their charity. You can figure this out on your own. And I almost listened. I almost turned around. I almost went back to my empty apartment, my empty fridge, my empty life. But then I remembered something. Something important. I remembered that the reason I was in this situation was because I had been trying to figure it out on my own. I had been so determined to be independent, so determined to prove that I could make it in America without help, that I had isolated myself. I had pushed people away. I had refused to ask for help. And that refusal, that stubborn, prideful refusal, had led me to this moment. To an empty apartment, an empty fridge, an empty life. So I kept walking. I kept walking even though every step felt like a betrayal of my pride. I kept walking even though every fiber of my being was screaming at me to turn around. I kept walking because I was hungry. Not just hungry for food. I was hungry for connection. I was hungry for community. I was hungry for someone, anyone, to look at me and see me. And then, finally, I arrived. I stood outside the church, staring at those beautiful stained glass windows, and I felt a wave of emotion wash over me.
Fear, shame, hope,
Desperation, gratitude, all of it, mixed together into a confusing, overwhelming cocktail of feeling. I stood there for a long time, just standing, just breathing, just trying to gather the courage to walk through those doors. And then I saw the sign again. All are welcome. And I realized that the sign wasn't just words. It was an invitation. It was an invitation to let go of my shame, to let go of my pride, to let go of the belief that I had to do everything on my own. It was an invitation to belong. So I took a deep breath. I squared my shoulders. And I walked in. The moment I stepped through those doors, I felt something shift. Something deep inside me. It was like the weight I had been carrying, the weight of failure, the weight of shame, the weight of loneliness started to lift. Not all at once. Not completely. But slightly. Just slightly. Just enough to let me breathe. And I realized that the church wasn't just a building.
It was a sanctuary.
A sanctuary for people like me. People who were lost. People who were broken. People who had forgotten that they were worthy of love. And in that moment, I made a promise to myself. A promise that I would never forget that I am worthy. That we are all worthy. That no matter how far we fall, no matter how lost we feel, no matter how dark the night seems, we are never beyond hope. We are never beyond redemption. We are never beyond love. And that promise, that quiet, private promise, became the foundation of my new life. The life I would build, step by step, brick by brick, starting with that first meal in that beautiful church. But that's a story for another time. For now, let me just say this. If you're feeling lost today, if you're feeling alone, if you're feeling like you can't go on, please remember this. You are not alone. You are not a failure. You are not beyond hope. You are human. And being human means being imperfect. It means needing help. It means falling down and getting back up again. And that's okay. That's more than okay. That's beautiful. Because every time you fall, you learn. Every time you get back up, you grow. And every time you ask for help, you become stronger. So go ahead. Ask for help. Reach out.
Take that step.
Because you never know what's waiting for you on the other side of that door. You never know what miracle is just waiting to happen. And sometimes, the miracle is just a smile, a handshake, a bowl of soup, a moment of connection. But sometimes that's all you need. That's all anyone needs.
So take the step.
Walk through the door and see what happens. The strangers who saw me.
Picture this if you can.
You're standing in a room full of strangers. People you've never met. People who don't know your name, your story, or the weight of the failures you're carrying. And yet, somehow, they look at you like you belong. Like you've always belonged. Like you were supposed to be there, at that exact moment, in that exact place. That's how I felt when I walked into that church hall. It was overwhelming.
Disorienting.
Beautiful. There were maybe 50 people in the room, maybe more. Families with young children. Elderly couples holding hands. Young professionals who had clearly just come from the gym. People from every walk of life, every age, every background. They were all sitting at long tables, eating, laughing, talking. And the noise was incredible. The clinking of forks against plates. The hum of 100 conversations. The occasional burst of laughter from a table in the corner. It was the sound of community. The sound of people coming together, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And I stood at the entrance frozen just watching. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know the rules. Was I supposed to sit anywhere? Was I supposed to wait for someone to tell me where to go? Was I even allowed to be here? My heart was racing. My palms were sweating. I felt like a child on the first day of school, terrified and completely lost. And then, just like that, a hand touched my shoulder. A gentle, warm hand. I turned around and there she was. The woman from earlier. The one who had offered to bring me a plate. She was older, maybe in her 50s, with silver streaks in her hair and the kindest eyes I had ever seen. Eyes that didn't judge. Eyes that just saw. She smiled at me, a warm smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes, and she said, "You look lost. Let me help you." And just like that, the tension in my shoulders started to release. Just a little. Just enough. She guided me to a table near the back of the room. A table that was mostly empty, except for an older man sitting at the far end, reading a newspaper.
Sit here, she said.
I'll bring you some food. Is there anything you don't eat? I shook my head. I was too overwhelmed to speak. She laughed, a light, musical laugh, and said, "Good.
I'll be right back."
And then she was gone.
Just like that.
She disappeared into the crowd, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the stranger at the end of the table. I sat down. I stared at the tablecloth. I tried to breathe. And then the stranger spoke. "First time here?" he asked, without looking up from his newspaper. His voice was gruff, a little rough, but not unfriendly. I nodded. Then I realized he couldn't see me nod, so I said, "Yes. Yes, it is." He folded his newspaper.
He looked at me.
He had a weathered face, the kind of face that had seen a lot of life. Wrinkles around his eyes. Gray stubble on his chin. But his eyes were kind.
Warm.
"Don't worry," he said. "Everyone's nervous the first time. I was nervous too. Been coming here for 5 years now, and I still get nervous sometimes." And that right there was the moment I started to relax. Because this man, this complete stranger, had just admitted that he was nervous too. He had just shown me that vulnerability wasn't a weakness. It was a shared human experience. "I'm Frank," he said, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you." I took his hand. It was rough, calloused, like he had worked with his hands his whole life. But his grip was firm, confident. I hesitated. I almost gave a fake name. I almost protected myself. But something about Frank made me feel safe. Made me feel like I didn't have to pretend. "I'm John," I said. "Nice to meet you too." Frank nodded. "Well, John, you picked a good day to come. They're serving my favorite today. Meatloaf." I've been eating their meatloaf for 5 years, and it's still the best I've ever had. I laughed. It was a small laugh, barely more than a chuckle, but it felt good. It felt like I was remembering how to be human again. And then, the woman returned. She was carrying 2 plates, both piled high with food. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, a roll, and a small cup of soup. It looked like a feast. "Here you go," she said, placing 1 plate in front of me. "Eat up. You look like you need it." I didn't even know what to say. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I was overwhelmed by the kindness, overwhelmed by the food, overwhelmed by the simple, profound fact that these people, these strangers, had welcomed me without question, without judgment, without expecting anything in return. "Thank you," I finally managed. My voice was thick. My eyes were burning. I was about to cry, but I didn't. I took a deep breath. I picked up my fork, and I ate. The food was incredible. Warm, hearty, filling. It tasted like home. Not my home, not the home I had left behind, but some universal, comforting idea of home. The kind of home that exists in the hearts of people who believe in kindness. And as I ate, I started to listen. I listened to Frank.
He told me about his life.
His wife had passed away 3 years ago. He had no children. He was alone. He started coming to the church because he couldn't bear to eat dinner by himself. He needed to be around people. He needed to feel connected. And the church, this small church in the middle of the city, had given him that connection. It had given him a reason to get out of bed in the morning. It had given him a family. I listened to the woman who had brought me the food. Her name was Sarah. She was a retired teacher. She had been volunteering at the church for 10 years. She said it was the most meaningful thing she had ever done. Not because it made her feel good, but because it made her feel useful. It made her feel like she was making a difference. And she was. She was making a difference. She was making a difference in my life. And that was the moment I realized something profound. Something that would change my life forever. I realized that community isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about showing up, even when you don't have it all figured out. It's about offering what you can, whether that's a meal, a smile, or just a listening ear. I realized that the people in that room weren't saints. They weren't perfect. They were just people. People who had been through their own struggles. People who had experienced their own losses. People who understood, on a deep and fundamental level, what it felt like to be alone. And because they understood, they reached out. They extended a hand. They said, "You belong here." And I did belong. In that moment, sitting at that table, eating that meatloaf, surrounded by strangers who had become friends, I belonged. It was a feeling I had been searching for since I arrived in America. A feeling I had been desperate to find. And I had found it. Not in a job. Not in a paycheck. Not in a fancy apartment or a nice car. I had found it in the most unlikely of places. In a church basement, surrounded by people who had nothing and everything to give. That was the beginning of my healing. That was the beginning of my new life. But it was only the beginning. There was so much more to come. So much more to learn. So much more to experience. But for now, for that moment, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And that, my friends, is a miracle. Not a loud miracle. Not a dramatic miracle. But a quiet one. A whispered one. A miracle that said, "You are not alone. You have never been alone. And you will never be alone." More than just a free meal. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat down and ate a meal that wasn't just food? I don't mean a fancy dinner at a restaurant. I don't mean a holiday feast with all the trimmings. I mean a simple, ordinary meal that somehow nourished more than just your body. A meal that fed your soul. A meal that reminded you that you were alive, that you mattered, that you were part of something bigger than yourself. That's what that meal was for me. That first meal in that church basement. It wasn't just food.
It was a lifeline.
It was a message. A message that said, "You are seen. You are valued. You are not forgotten." And the funny thing is, I didn't realize how much I needed that message until I received it. I had been so focused on the practicalities of survival, the rent, the bills, the empty fridge, that I had forgotten about the emotional survival. The part of survival that requires connection. The part that requires love. And that's what I found in that church. Not just food. Not just a hot meal. But love. Real, unconditional, no strings attached love. It came in the form of Sarah, the woman who had brought me the plate.
She didn't know me.
She didn't know my story.
But she saw me.
She saw the hunger in my eyes, the exhaustion in my shoulders, the desperation in my silence. And she responded with kindness, not because she had to, not because it was her job, but because she chose to, because that's who she was. And that choice, that simple, profound choice to be kind, changed my life. I know that sounds dramatic. I know it sounds like the kind of thing you hear in a movie or read in a book, but it's true. That moment of kindness, that moment of being seen, was the turning point. It was the moment I stopped feeling like a failure and started feeling like a human being. It was the moment I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could make it after all. After the meal, I stayed for a while. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go back to my empty apartment, my empty fridge, my empty life. So I stayed. I helped clear the tables. I washed the dishes. I did whatever I could to be useful. And in doing so, I discovered something amazing. I discovered that being useful, being needed, being part of a community, is one of the most healing things you can ever experience. It takes you out of your own head. It makes you focus on something other than your own problems. It reminds you that you have value, that you have something to offer, that you are not just a burden. And I realized in that moment that the people at that church weren't just feeding me. They were saving me. They were saving me from the darkness that had been consuming me. They were saving me from the loneliness that had been suffocating me. They were saving me from myself. And I will be forever grateful for that. But it wasn't just the adults. It was the children too. There was a little girl, maybe 6 years old, who came up to me while I was washing the dishes. She had pigtails and a gap-toothed smile, and she was holding a drawing. "I made this for you," she said, handing me the paper. I looked at the drawing. It was a picture of a family, a mom, a dad, a little girl, and a dog. And in the corner, she had written, "Welcome." It was the simplest, most beautiful gift I had ever received. And I cried. I cried right there, in the middle of the kitchen, in front of all those strangers. I couldn't help it. That little girl, with her pigtails and her gap-toothed smile, had given me something I didn't even know I needed. She had given me hope. She had given me a reason to believe that tomorrow might be better than today. She had given me a glimpse of the future I wanted. A future with a family. A future with love. A future with joy. And I knew, in that moment, that I had to find a way to make that future a reality. I had to find a way to get back on my feet. Not just for myself, but for the people I hadn't even met yet. The people I would one day love. The people who would one day love me. That was the miracle of the free meal. It wasn't just that my stomach was full. It was that my heart was full too. It was that I had been reminded, in the most beautiful way possible, that I was not alone. That I had never been alone. That the universe, in its infinite wisdom, had placed me in that church, at that table, with those people, for a reason. And that reason was to remind me that hope is always possible. That change is always possible. That healing is always possible. All you have to do is open yourself up to it. All you have to do is say yes. Say yes to the kindness of strangers. Say yes to the possibility of connection. Say yes to the belief that tomorrow can be better than today. And that's what I did. I said yes. I said yes to the meal. I said yes to the community. I said yes to the hope. And that yes, that tiny, simple, terrifying yes, changed everything. It opened doors I didn't even know existed. It connected me to people I never would have met. It gave me the courage to keep going, even when everything inside me wanted to give up. And that, my friends, is the real miracle. Not the food, not the shelter, not even the kindness,
But the yes.
the willingness to believe that there is something better waiting for you on the other side of your fear. The willingness to take a chance on hope. The willingness to trust that the universe, in its own mysterious way, is working for your good. So if you're out there listening to this, and you're feeling lost, feeling alone, feeling like you can't go on, please, I beg you, say yes. Say yes to the next opportunity that comes your way. Say yes to the kindness of a stranger. Say yes to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, your life is about to change. Because it can. It really, really can. I know because it happened to me. I know because I was the one who was lost. I was the one who was alone. I was the one who couldn't see a way forward. And then I said yes. I said yes to a free meal. I said yes to a community. I said yes to hope. And that yes, that simple, beautiful, life-changing yes, led me to where I am today. To a life I never could have imagined. To a love I never thought I would find. To a family I never dared to dream of. And it all started with a yellow piece of paper, a stranger's kindness, and a yes. So please, say yes. Your miracle is waiting. The quiet miracle in the soup. I want to tell you about the moment everything changed. Not the big moment. Not the dramatic moment. The quiet one. The one that happened so subtly, so gently, that I almost missed it. It was a few weeks after my first visit to the church. I had been going regularly. Every Sunday. Sometimes twice a week when they had midweek meals. And I was getting to know the regulars. Sarah, the retired teacher, who always made sure I had enough to eat. Frank, the old man who had lost his wife and found a new family in that church basement. And others. So many others. Each with their own story. Each with their own pain. Each with their own quiet miracles waiting to happen. But there was one person I hadn't really talked to yet. A woman. She was younger than me, maybe in her late 20s. She had dark hair and dark eyes and a smile that lit up the room. But there was something about her. Something sad. Something guarded. She always sat at the same table. Always ate alone. Always left as soon as she was finished. She didn't talk to anyone. She didn't look at anyone. She just existed. And I was curious about her. Not in a creepy way. Not in a I want to save you way. Just in a human way. I wanted to know her story. I wanted to understand what had brought her to that church basement, just like it had brought me. But I didn't approach her.
I was too shy.
Too afraid of rejection. Too convinced that she wouldn't want to talk to someone like me. Someone who was still broken. Someone who was still figuring out how to put the pieces of his life back together. And then one Sunday, something happened. Something that changed everything. It was after the meal. I was helping clear the tables as I always did. And I noticed that she had left something behind. A small notebook. It was lying on the table, right where she had been sitting. I picked it up. I didn't open it. I wouldn't do that. That would be an invasion of privacy. But I held it in my hands, feeling the weight of it. The worn leather cover, the pages that had been written in countless times. And I knew I had to give it back to her. I looked around the room. She was gone. She had already left. But I had seen her before. I knew where she sat. I knew what she looked like. I knew I could find her. So I took the notebook.
I didn't know why.
I just felt compelled. I felt like this was important, like this was a sign. And I walked out of the church, clutching the notebook to my chest, and I started to look for her. I walked down the street. I looked in every direction, and then I saw her. She was standing at the bus stop, waiting for the bus. Her head was down. Her shoulders were slumped. She looked so sad, so lonely,
So lost.
I walked up to her. My heart was pounding. My palms were sweating. I felt like a teenager asking someone to prom. "Excuse me?" I said. "I think you left this." She looked up. She looked at me. And then she looked at the notebook in my hands. And something happened. Something shifted. Her eyes widened. Her face softened. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes.
Hope.
Or maybe gratitude. Or maybe just recognition. The recognition that someone had seen her. That someone had noticed her. That someone cared enough to return a forgotten notebook. "Oh," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you. Thank you so much." She took the notebook from my hands. Her fingers brushed against mine. And I felt it. A spark. A tiny, electric, undeniable spark. I don't know if she felt it too. I don't know if she noticed. But I did. And I knew, in that moment, that something had changed. Something had shifted between us. Something had been set in motion that I couldn't control and couldn't stop. And I was terrified. But I was also excited. I was also hopeful. I was also, for the first time in a long time, alive. "I'm John," I said, sticking out my hand. She hesitated. She looked at my hand like it was a foreign object. And then, slowly, she took it. "I'm Elena," she said.
Thank you, John.
"This notebook means a lot to me." She didn't say anything else. She didn't explain why it meant so much. She didn't share her story. But she didn't have to. I could see it in her eyes. I could see the pain, the loss, the loneliness. I could see that she was carrying a weight just as heavy as mine. And I wanted to help her.
I wanted to carry some of that weight.
I wanted to be there for her, the way the church had been there for me.
But I didn't know how.
I didn't know if she would let me. So I just stood there, awkwardly, watching her.
She looked at me.
She smiled. A small, tentative smile. And then the bus came. She got on. She waved goodbye. And I stood there, watching the bus disappear, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time.
Hope.
Real, genuine, beautiful hope. That was the quiet miracle. That was the moment I realized that I wasn't just being saved. I was being given a purpose, a reason to keep going, a reason to believe that the future held something wonderful for me. I didn't know what would happen with Elena. I didn't know if I would ever see her again, but I knew that I wanted to.
I knew that I had to.
Because she had reminded me of something important. She had reminded me that we are all connected, that we all have the power to make a difference in each other's lives, that even the smallest act of kindness can change everything. And that's what I did.
И chose kindness.
I chose to see her. I chose to reach out. And that choice, that simple, beautiful, life-changing choice, opened a door I never knew existed. It led me to love. It led me to family. It led me to the life I have today. But that's a story for another time. For now, let me just say this. If you're out there listening to this, and you're feeling lost, feeling alone, feeling like no one sees you, I want you to know that you are seen.
You are seen by me.
You are seen by the universe. And you are worthy of love. You are worthy of connection. You are worthy of the quiet miracles that are waiting for you. All you have to do is open your eyes, open your heart, and say yes. A job offer from a prayer. You know what they say about prayers, right? Some people say they're just wishes whispered into the void. Empty words that disappear into the silence, never to be heard by anyone. And maybe that's true for some people. Maybe for some people, prayers are just that. Words. Hopes. Desperate pleas that never get answered. But for me, something different happened. Something that made me question everything I thought I knew about the universe, about faith, about the mysterious ways in which life works. It happened about a month after I met Elena. I had been going to the church regularly, every Sunday and every Wednesday. I had become part of the community. I knew the regulars. I knew their stories. I knew their struggles. And I had started to feel like I belonged. Like I had found my tribe. But I still didn't have a job. I had been looking. Of course I had been looking. I had spent hours every day scrolling through job postings, sending out resumes, going to interviews. But nothing. Nothing was working. I was starting to lose hope again. The old, familiar darkness was creeping back in. The feeling that I was never going to make it. That I was always going to be stuck. That no matter how hard I tried, the universe was never going to give me a break. And then one Wednesday evening, something happened. Something that changed everything. I was at the church helping with the meal. I was serving soup as I always did. And I noticed a man sitting in the corner. He was new. I had never seen him before. He was older, maybe in his 60s, with gray hair and a kind face. He was eating his soup slowly, methodically, like he was savoring every bite. I didn't think much of it.
People came and went all the time.
But then, after the meal, he approached me. "You're John, right?" he asked. I was surprised. I didn't know him. I had never seen him before. How did he know my name? "Yes," I said hesitantly. "How did you know?" He smiled. A warm, genuine smile. "Sarah told me about you. She said you're a good man. She said you're looking for work." I nodded. My heart started to beat faster. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment when everything would change. "I'm Michael," he said. "I own a small construction company. We're looking for someone. Someone reliable. Someone with a good work ethic. Sarah said you might be interested." I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After months of searching, months of rejection, months of feeling like I was invisible, a job had found me. Not through a job posting. Not through a recruiter, but through a woman I barely knew who had been kind enough to speak well of me. "I don't have any experience in construction," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't know if I'm qualified." Michael laughed. "Experience isn't everything. A willing heart is worth more than 1,000 years of experience. You can learn the skills. You can't learn to care." And that was it. That was the moment my life changed. The moment I was offered a job, not because of my resume, not because of my credentials, but because someone had seen my heart. Someone had seen the goodness in me and had chosen to speak up for me. I took the job. Of course I took the job. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't high-paying, but it was honest work. It was good work. And it was the beginning of something new. Something beautiful. Something I never could have imagined. The first few weeks were hard. I didn't know anything about construction. I had never held a hammer in my life. I didn't know the difference between a nail and a screw. But Michael was patient. He taught me everything. He showed me how to use the tools. He showed me how to read the blueprints. He showed me how to work with my hands to create something from nothing. And I discovered something about myself. Something I never knew. I discovered that I loved it. I loved the physical work. I loved the feeling of building something that would last. I loved the camaraderie of the crew, the way we worked together, the way we laughed together. It was a different kind of community. A community built on sweat and effort and shared goals. And I felt alive. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. I was no longer the broken man who had lost his job. I was no longer the desperate immigrant who couldn't make it. I was John, a worker, a builder, a man who was starting to believe in himself again. And it was all because of a prayer. Not a prayer I had spoken. Not a prayer I had whispered into the void, but a prayer that had been spoken for me. A prayer from a woman who barely knew me, who had seen my pain and had decided to help. That was the real miracle. Not the job itself. Not the paycheck. But the love. The love that had been poured out for me. The love that had saved me. And I realized in that moment that life is not about what you achieve. It's not about the money, the status, the success. It's about the people. It's about the connections. It's about the love that we give and receive, often in the most unexpected ways. That's what matters. That's what lasts. And that's what I wanted to build my life around. Love. Connection.
Community.
So I kept working. I kept learning. I kept building. And little by little, I started to rebuild myself. Not the old self, the one who had failed, but a new self. A stronger self. A self that knew the value of kindness, the power of community, the importance of saying yes to the unexpected. It was a slow process. It was a painful process. But it was worth it. Because on the other side of that pain, on the other side of that struggle, there was something beautiful waiting for me. Something I couldn't see at the time. Something that would change my life forever. But that's a story for another time. For now, let me just say this. If you're out there listening to this, and you're feeling hopeless, feeling like nothing is going to change, feeling like you're never going to get a break, please, I beg you, keep going. Keep showing up.
Keep believing.
Because you never know when your miracle is going to show up. You never know when someone is going to see the goodness in you and decide to speak up for you. You never know when a simple act of kindness is going to change your life forever. So keep going. Keep believing.
Keep saying yes.
And one day, you'll look back and realize that the thing you thought was impossible had become possible. The thing you thought was broken had been healed. The thing you thought was lost had been found. And you'll be grateful. You'll be so incredibly grateful that you didn't give up.
That you kept going.
That you kept believing. Because that's what makes life worth living. That's what makes the struggle worth enduring. That's what makes the miracle possible. Love in the aisles of the church. I need to tell you about the moment I fell in love. Not the big moment. Not the dramatic moment. The quiet one. The one that happened so subtly, so gently, that I almost missed it. It was a Sunday morning, a few months after I had started working at the construction company. I was doing well. I was learning the trade. I was making friends. I was starting to feel like I had finally found my footing in this strange, beautiful, chaotic country. And then I saw her.
Elena.
She was sitting in her usual spot, at the back of the church alone. She was reading her notebook, the same one I had returned to her all those weeks ago. And she looked beautiful. Not just physically beautiful, though she was, but something else. Something deeper. Something in the way she held herself, the way she focused on her writing, the way she seemed so completely lost in her own world. I wanted to talk to her. I had wanted to talk to her for weeks. But I was scared. I was terrified, actually. What if she didn't want to talk to me? What if she was just being polite before? What if she didn't remember me at all? But then I remembered something. I remembered the church. I remembered the community. I remembered that I had been given a second chance, not just at life, but at love. And I decided that I wasn't going to let fear stop me. So I walked over to her. My heart was pounding. My palms were sweating. I felt like I was about to jump off a cliff.
Hi, I said.
Do you mind if I sit here? She looked up. She looked at me. And then she smiled. That same small, tentative smile from the bus stop. Sure, she said. I don't mind. I sat down. I didn't know what to say. I had been rehearsing this moment in my head for weeks, but now that it was actually happening, my mind was completely blank. So I said the first thing that came to mind. I see you here every week, I said. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, but I didn't have the courage.
She laughed.
A soft, melodic laugh. I know what you mean, she said. I've been wanting to talk to you too, but I was too scared. And just like that, the ice was broken. We talked for hours. We talked about everything. Where we came from. Why we were in America. What we were looking for. She told me her story. She had come to the United States from Mexico, just like me. She had come with dreams of a better life, just like me. But life had been hard. She had lost her job. She had lost her home. She had lost her hope. And she had found this church, just like me. I was so alone, she said. I felt like I was invisible, like no one could see me. But then I came here. And I realized that I wasn't invisible. I was just hidden. And all I had to do was let myself be seen. I understood. I understood completely. Because that's exactly how I had felt. That's exactly what I had experienced. And in that moment I knew that I had found something special. Something rare. Something that I didn't want to let go of. Elena, I said. I know this is crazy. I know we've only just met. But I feel like I've known you my whole life. I feel like we were meant to meet. Like the universe brought us together for a reason. She looked at me. Her eyes were shining.
I feel the same way, she said.
I don't know what it is, but I feel it too. And that was the beginning. The beginning of something beautiful. Something that would change both of our lives forever. We started spending more time together. We would meet at the church after the meals. We would walk through the park, talking about our dreams, our fears, our hopes for the future. We would share our stories, our pain, our joy. And slowly, gradually, we started to heal each other. I helped her see that she was worthy of love. She helped me see that I was worthy of happiness. We were two broken people, coming together to create something whole. It wasn't always easy. We had our struggles. We had our disagreements. We had moments when we wanted to give up. But we didn't. We kept fighting. We kept believing. And in the end, our love was stronger than anything life could throw at us. I remember the day I told her I loved her. We were sitting on a bench in the park, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and gold. It was the most beautiful sunset I had ever seen. And I turned to her and I said, Elena, I love you. I know it's only been a few months. I know it's crazy, but I love you. I love everything about you. The way you laugh, the way you smile, the way you make me feel like I can do anything. She looked at me. Her eyes were filled with tears. I love you too, John, she said. I love you so much it scares me. And we kissed. Right there in the middle of the park in front of everyone. And it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. That was the moment I knew. I knew that this was it. This was the life I had been searching for. This was the love I had been dreaming of. This was the future I had been fighting for. And I was never going to let it go. I was never going to let her go. She was my miracle. My quiet, beautiful, unexpected miracle. And I was going to spend the rest of my life making sure she knew how much she meant to me. We got married 6 months later. It was a small ceremony, just a few friends from the church. Sarah officiated. Frank walked Elena down the aisle. It was the most beautiful day of my life. And when I looked into her eyes, when I said, "I do," I knew that everything I had been through had been worth it. Every moment of pain, every moment of doubt, every moment of fear, it had all been leading me to her, to this moment, to this love. And I was grateful. I was so incredibly grateful. Not just for Elena, not just for the love we shared, but for the journey that had brought us together. The journey that had taught me the true meaning of love, of hope, of faith. It was a journey I would never forget. It was a journey I would never regret. And it was a journey that was just beginning. There was so much more to come, so much more to experience, so much more to learn. But for now, for this moment, I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with the woman I loved, in the country I had chosen, living the life I had always dreamed of. And that, my friends, is a miracle. Not a loud miracle, not a dramatic miracle, but a quiet one, a whispered one, a miracle that said, "You are loved. You have always been loved, and you will always be loved." Building a family, brick by brick. You know what they say about building a life in a new country? They say it's like building a house. You start with the foundation, then you add the walls, then the roof, and eventually you have a home. But what they don't tell you is that the foundation isn't concrete. It's love. And the walls aren't wood. They're trust. And the roof isn't shingles. It's faith. Faith that everything is going to work out. Faith that the struggle is worth it. Faith that love will carry you through. That's what Elena and I discovered as we started building our life together. It wasn't easy. Nothing worth having ever is. But we had each other. And we had our community. And we had hope. We had so much hope. We got married in that same church where we had met. The same church where I had eaten my first free meal. The same church where I had found my first job. The same church where I had found my first love.
It was a small ceremony.
Just a few friends from the community. Sarah officiated. Frank walked Elena down the aisle. And when we said our vows, when we promised to love and cherish each other for the rest of our lives, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. A sense of belonging. A sense that everything was exactly as it should be. After the wedding, we moved into a small apartment. It wasn't much. Just a tiny one-bedroom with a kitchen that was barely big enough for 2 people. But it was ours. It was the first home I had ever had. Not just a place to sleep, but a home. A place filled with love and laughter and hope. And we were so happy. So incredibly happy. A year later, we had our first child. A daughter. We named her Maria, after Elena's grandmother. She was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. With her tiny fingers and her tiny toes and her tiny little nose. And when I held her in my arms, when I looked into her eyes, I knew. I knew that everything I had been through had been worth it. Every moment of pain. Every moment of doubt. Every moment of fear. It had all been leading me to this moment. To this tiny, perfect, miraculous human being. Being a father changed me. It changed everything. It made me see the world differently. It made me see the future differently. It made me see myself differently. I was no longer just a man trying to survive. I was a father, a protector, a provider. I had a responsibility to my daughter, to my wife, to the family we were building together. And I took that responsibility seriously. I worked hard. I worked long hours. I came home exhausted, covered in dust and sweat. But when I saw Maria's face, when I heard her laugh, all the exhaustion melted away. It was all worth it. It was all so incredibly worth it. Elena was amazing. She was a natural mother. patient and kind and loving. She would sing to Maria in Spanish, her voice soft and melodic, filling our tiny apartment with music. And I would sit there, watching them, feeling so incredibly grateful. Grateful for this life. Grateful for this love. Grateful for this family. But life wasn't always easy. There were struggles. There were challenges. There were moments when we wondered if we would make it. Money was tight. Our apartment was small. We had to make sacrifices. But we never lost hope. We never lost faith. And we never lost each other. We had our community. The church that had saved me was now saving my family. They helped us when we needed it. They supported us when we were struggling. They celebrated with us when we were happy. And they reminded us, again and again, that we were not alone. We were never alone. And then, 2 years later, we had our second child.
Asson.
We named him David, after my father. He was just as beautiful as his sister. Just as perfect. Just as miraculous. And now, our family was complete. 2 children. 2 beautiful, healthy, happy children. It was more than I ever could have imagined. More than I ever dared to dream. I remember one night, sitting in our tiny living room, watching Elena put the children to bed. The sun was setting outside, casting a warm golden glow through the window. And I felt so incredibly grateful. So incredibly blessed. I had come to this country with nothing. With no job. No money. No hope. And now I had everything.
A wife.
2 children.
A home.
A community. A life. A life I never could have imagined. A life I never would have believed was possible. And it had all started with a yellow piece of paper. A free meal. A moment of hope. That was the miracle. Not the job. Not the money. Not even the love. But the hope. The hope that had carried me through the darkest moments. The hope that had whispered to me, keep going, keep believing,
keep trusting.
And I had. I had kept going. I had kept believing. I had kept trusting. And now I was here, in this beautiful moment, with this beautiful family, in this beautiful life. It was everything I had ever wanted. And it was more than I ever could have imagined. That night, I knelt down beside my bed. I didn't know if anyone was listening. I didn't know if there was anyone out there. But I prayed anyway. I prayed for my family. I prayed for my community. I prayed for the people who had helped me along the way. And I prayed for you. For the person listening to this story. The person who might be going through their own dark night. The person who might be feeling lost and alone. I prayed that you would find the same hope I found. The same community. The same love. The same miracle. Because if it could happen to me, it could happen to you. I was nobody special. Just a man who had lost his job and his hope. But I found both again. And so can you. That's the miracle. Not the happy ending. But the journey. The journey from darkness to light. The journey from despair to hope. The journey from loneliness to love. And that's what I want to share with you. That's what I want to show you. That no matter how dark it seems, no matter how lost you feel, there is always hope. There is always a way forward. There is always a miracle waiting to happen. All you have to do is keep going. Keep believing. Keep trusting. And one day, you'll look back and realize that everything you went through was worth it. Everything you suffered was worth it. Everything you lost was worth it. Because you found something better. Something more precious. Something that can never be taken away. You found yourself. You found your community. You found your love. And that, my friends, is the greatest miracle of all. From free meals to a full table. I want you to imagine something with me. Picture a table. Not just any table. A table that has seen it all. A table that has been empty, so empty that the sight of it made your stomach ache and your heart sink. A table that has been full, so full that you couldn't see the wood beneath the plates and the bowls and the dishes of food. A table that has witnessed tears of despair and tears of joy. A table that has held the weight of a man's broken dreams and, years later, the weight of a family's abundant blessings. That table is mine. That table is my life. And it's the table I want to tell you about. Because that table, that simple, wooden, unremarkable table, tells the entire story of my journey. It tells the story of how I went from nothing to everything, from hopeless to hopeful, from alone to surrounded by love. And it all started with a free meal. A meal I ate at a table just like this one in a church basement, surrounded by strangers who would become my family. I remember that first meal so clearly. The meatloaf, the mashed potatoes, the green beans, the roll, the soup. It was the most delicious meal I had ever eaten. Not because of the food itself, but because of what it represented. It represented hope. It represented kindness. It represented the belief that I was worth saving. And now, years later, I sit at my own table. A table that is full. Not just full of food, but full of love. Full of laughter. Full of life. My wife, Elena, sits across from me. My daughter, Maria, sits to my left. My son, David, sits to my right. And we eat together.
We talk together.
We laugh together. We are a family. A real, genuine, beautiful family. And I never take it for granted. I never forget where I came from. I never forget the empty table, the empty fridge, the empty life. That memory keeps me humble. It keeps me grateful. It keeps me grounded. It reminds me that everything I have is a gift. A gift I didn't earn. A gift I didn't deserve. A gift that was given to me by the kindness of strangers. And I want to pass that gift on. I want to be the kind of person who gives free meals, who opens their home,
Who extends a hand.
who says, "You belong here." That's what I learned from the church. That's what I learned from Sarah and Frank and Michael and all the other people who saved my life. They taught me that kindness is contagious. That generosity is infectious. That love is the most powerful force in the universe. And I want to spread that love. I want to spread it to my children. I want to spread it to my community. I want to spread it to anyone who needs it. Because I know what it's like to need it. I know what it's like to feel invisible. To feel worthless. To feel like you don't matter. And I know what it's like to be seen. To be valued. To be loved. That's why I go back to that church. Every Sunday. Every Wednesday. I still volunteer. I still serve meals. I still wash dishes. I still sit with the lonely and the lost and the broken. And I tell them my story. I tell them that things can get better. That hope is real. That miracles happen. Because they do. They really, really do.
I've seen them.
I've lived them. I am living proof that miracles are real. And I want you to know that too. I want you to know that no matter how dark it gets, no matter how hopeless it seems, there is always a light. There is always a way forward. There is always a miracle waiting to happen. You just have to keep going. You just have to keep believing. You just have to keep trusting. And you have to be willing to accept help. That was the hardest lesson for me. Accepting help. It felt like failure. It felt like weakness. It felt like I was giving up. But I wasn't giving up. I was opening up. I was opening myself to the possibility that I didn't have to do it alone. That I could lean on others. That I could be supported. That I could be saved. And when I finally accepted that, when I finally let go of my pride and my fear and my stubborn independence, everything changed. The doors opened. The opportunities came. The love flowed in. And I realized that accepting help isn't weakness. It's strength. It's the strongest thing you can do. Because it takes courage to admit that you can't do it alone. It takes courage to trust someone else with your pain. It takes courage to believe that you are worthy of love. And you are. You are worthy. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of kindness. You are worthy of a full table. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. You are worthy. And if you don't believe me, if you don't believe yourself, then believe in the miracle. Believe in the possibility. Believe in the hope. Because that's what saved me. That's what saved my family. That's what saved my life. And that's what can save yours too.
So keep going. Keep believing. Keep trusting.
And one day, you'll look back at your own table, at your own family, at your own life. And you'll realize that everything you went through was worth it. Everything you suffered was worth it. Everything you lost was worth it. Because you found something better. Something more precious. Something that can never be taken away. You found hope. You found love. You found home. And that, my friends, is the greatest miracle of all. That's the miracle I want to share with you. That's the miracle I want you to experience. That's the miracle I want you to believe in. Because it's real. It's happening. And it's waiting for you. All you have to do is say yes. Say yes to the meal. Say yes to the community. Say yes to the love. Say yes to the miracle. And watch your life change. Watch your table fill. Watch your heart heal. It won't happen overnight. It might take years. It might take decades. But it will happen. I promise you. It will happen. Because the universe is kind. The universe is loving. The universe is on your side. And the universe wants you to succeed. The universe wants you to be happy. The universe wants you to have a full table. So trust it. Trust the process. Trust the journey. Trust the miracle. And let it happen. That slow English was my lifeline. And now, my friends, we've come to the end of the story. But in a way, it's not really the end. It's the beginning. The beginning of your story. The beginning of your journey. The beginning of your miracle. Because that's what this has all been about, hasn't it? It's not just about me. It's not just about my journey, my struggles, my triumphs. It's about you. It's about the person listening to this right now in this moment. It's about the person who is struggling with English, who is struggling with life, who is struggling with hope.
And I want to tell you something.
Something important. Something I wish someone had told me when I was sitting in that empty apartment, staring at that empty fridge, feeling like my life was over. I want to tell you that you are not alone. You are not alone in your struggle. You are not alone in your fear. You are not alone in your doubt. There are millions of people out there all over the world who are going through exactly what you're going through. People who are learning English, who are trying to make it in a new country, who are trying to rebuild their lives from the ground up. And they feel just as lost and scared and overwhelmed as you do. But they keep going. They keep trying. They keep believing. And so can you. I know it's hard. I know it feels impossible sometimes. I know there are days when you want to give up. When you want to crawl back into bed and never come out. When you want to scream at the universe and ask why everything has to be so difficult. But I'm here to tell you that it gets better. It really does. It gets better because you get better. You get stronger. You get wiser. You get more resilient. Every single day you're growing. Every single day you are learning. Every single day you are becoming more of who you are meant to be. And that's the miracle. Not the happy ending. Not the successful career. Not the perfect family. But the growth. The transformation. The becoming. You are becoming. And that is a beautiful thing. That is a sacred thing. That is a miraculous thing. And I want to help you on that journey. I want to be there for you the way the church was there for me. I want to offer you a hand, a meal, a word of encouragement. I want to remind you that you are worthy, that you are loved, that you are never, ever alone. That's why I created this video. That's why I created this channel. It's not just about learning English. It's not just about practicing pronunciation or vocabulary or grammar. It's about connection. It's about community. It's about hope. And it's about the belief that we are all in this together. So let me leave you with this. I want you to think about your own journey. I want you to think about the struggles you've faced and the triumphs you've achieved. I want you to think about the people who have helped you along the way, the people who have extended a hand, who have offered a kind word, who have reminded you that you matter. And I want you to think about the people you can help, the people who are struggling just like you were, the people who are lost just like you were, the people who need to hear that they are not alone. Because that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's about paying it forward. It's about sharing the love that was given to you. It's about being a light in the darkness, a hope in the despair, a miracle in the mundane. That's what I try to do every day. That's what I try to be for my family, for my community, for my viewers. And that's what I want you to do too. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to show up. You just have to be present. You just have to be willing to try. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. So keep going. Keep learning. Keep believing. Keep growing. And one day, you'll look back at your own journey, at your own struggles, at your own triumphs. And you'll realize that everything you went through was worth it. Everything you suffered was worth it. Everything you lost was worth it. Because you found something better. Something more precious. Something that can never be taken away. You found yourself. You found your voice. You found your hope. And that's the greatest miracle of all. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you for trusting me with your time, your attention, your heart. It means more to me than I can ever say. And I want you to know that I believe in you. I believe in your strength. I believe in your resilience. I believe in your ability to overcome. And I will be here cheering you on every step of the way. So keep practicing, keep listening, keep reading,
Keep speaking.
and remember, you are not alone. You have never been alone, and you will never be alone. I hope this story has inspired you. I hope it has reminded you that miracles are real. I hope it has given you the courage to keep going. And I hope it has shown you that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope. There is always love. There is always a way forward. So go out there and live your life. Build your table. Fill it with love. Share it with others. And never, ever forget that you are worthy. You are beautiful. You are enough. And you are loved. That's all for today. I'll make more similar videos in the future. Please subscribe to watch them. And so, my friend, we've reached the end of this journey together. But let me be completely honest with you. This isn't really an ending at all. It's a beginning. It's the beginning of something new, something beautiful, something that has been waiting for you all along. Because if there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: your miracle is out there. It's waiting for you. It's been waiting for you since the day you were born, and it will keep waiting for you until you're ready to receive it. I know that sounds like something out of a self-help book, something cheesy and cliched and unrealistic. But I promise you it's not. I've lived it. I've breathed it. I've tasted it in a bowl of soup served by a stranger who saw me when I felt invisible. I've felt it in the handshake of a man who offered me a job when I had lost all hope. I've held it in my arms in the form of a tiny baby girl who taught me what it really means to love. And I've seen it in the eyes of a woman who chose to love me despite all my brokenness and all my flaws. So when I tell you that miracles are real, I'm not just saying empty words. I'm speaking from the deepest part of my soul. I'm speaking from experience. I'm speaking from the truth of my own life. And I want you to experience that truth too. I want you to experience the miracle of being seen, of being valued, of being loved. I want you to experience the miracle of hope, even when everything around you seems hopeless. I want you to experience the miracle of community, of finding your tribe, of belonging somewhere. I want you to experience the miracle of a full table, a full heart, a full life. And I want to help you get there. That's why I created this channel. That's why I share these stories. That's why I speak slowly, clearly, carefully, so that you can understand every word, every emotion, every lesson. Because I believe that language is more than just words. It's connection. It's understanding. It's the bridge that brings us together. And when you learn to speak a new language, you're not just learning grammar and vocabulary. You're learning to connect. You're learning to understand. You're learning to belong. So I invite you to keep going. Keep learning. Keep practicing. Keep showing up. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Not because you'll be perfect, but because you'll be better. Not because you'll never struggle again, but because you'll know, deep in your heart, that you can survive any struggle. Because you already have. You're still here. You're still trying. You're still believing. And that's the miracle. That's the quiet, beautiful, everyday miracle that too many of us take for granted. So please, if you've made it this far, if you've listened to my entire story, if you've felt even a glimmer of hope in your heart, I'm asking you to do something for me. I'm asking you to take action. I'm asking you to make a commitment. Not to me, not to this channel, but to yourself, to your own journey, to your own miracle. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that bell icon. Become part of this community. Not because you need another subscription in your feed, but because you need to be reminded every single day that you are not alone, that you are worthy, that you are loved, that your story matters. Because it does. Your story matters. Your voice matters. Your struggles matter. Your triumphs matter. And I want to be here to witness them. I want to be here to celebrate them. I want to be here to encourage you when things get hard and cheer for you when things get good.
So join me.
Let's take this journey together. Let's keep practicing, keep learning, keep growing, and let's keep believing that the best is yet to come. Because it is. I promise you, it is. And one day, you'll look back at this moment, at this video, at this story, and you'll realize that it was the turning point. That it was the moment you decided to believe. That it was the moment you decided to hope. And that hope, that beautiful, fragile, powerful hope, will carry you through the darkest nights and into the brightest days. I believe in you.
I've always believed in you.
And I'll keep believing in you, no matter what. So go out there and live your life. Build your table. Fill it with love. Share it with others. And never, ever forget that you are worthy. You are beautiful. You are enough. And you are loved. This is John, signing off. But remember, this isn't goodbye. This is just the beginning. See you in the next video. And until then, keep practicing, keep believing, and keep chasing your miracle. It's closer than you think. That's all for today. I'll make more similar videos in the future. Please subscribe to watch them.